Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cobus, as the slide says. For the next couple of minutes, you're going to have to hear from me. You're going to have to look at my ugly face or the presentation. I would recommend the presentation. So I'm going to talk about AI security and specifically in the email landscape, right? But before we can get to a current state, wrong button. Let's look at how we got here. 20 years ago, email security was a very different situation, right? You had thousands of very non-specific emails. We all very likely have received the email from the Nigerian prince. Quick engagement. Who has not received the Nigerian prince example? Yeah, there we go, right? What's changed, right? The concept of spear phishing sort of started, right? We now have situations where the attackers would investigate and research us and our organizations, and they'll say, I'm going to be focused, I'm going to be specific. So instead of this massive volume of emails that could potentially be easily catched, it's now very bespoke, it's very targeted. What about AI, Cobus? Well, our research showed that since the advent of the likes of a ChatGPT, the amount of novel social engineering attacks or social engagements via email increased by 135%, right? So we're starting to look at the volume from way back when, but with the sophistication of today. What's the impact of that, right? So Forrester did some wonderful research for us. Actually, we just licensed it. They didn't do it for us. But what they said is when they surveyed their customers, some of your global peers, is that most organizations are saying that one email security solution is no longer enough, that they rely on 2+. That means 2, 3, 4, 5 email security solutions to counter that 135% of emails. This, as Darktrace, realigns very much with our experience from our own customers, right? What we've seen is that in our customer base, 75% of customers only have that one layer. We are that augmentative second plus layer. So it fits very in line with what Forrester is saying. Let's take a look, however, wrong button again. How did we, what's this AI evolution, these massive amounts of emails that are bespoke and focused at us? Why are the number one, the solution number one, why is that no longer good enough? Why do we have to look at 2, right? Here's the first thing. It's no longer just about email. Quick name drop, Black Basta, that's an attack. It's a couple of years old now, but it's an attack that gets into the inbox without a link, without an attachment. But what it does, it prompts the user to go into Microsoft Teams and interact there. So it's no longer about just email security, it's about this multi-platform security. And these solutions just aren't scaling. And with that, I don't know, it's a bit of a joke that I always use, IBM, idiot behind machine. It's still very true. 60% of attacks still originate from that person doing something that they're not supposed to do, right? We as Darktrace, we say, listen, we're an AI company, defend AI, or defend AI attacks using AI. A lot of people on the stage I've been watching have been saying that, use AI to counter AI. Here's the challenge, however. Just dropping in an AI solution doesn't necessarily mean success. Quick little story. I went to a customer a couple of weeks ago and they said, I want to show you this cool new feature that we got from the solution. I can type in and I can say, tell me why this email is bad. And a couple of seconds later, there's a response that says, well, looking at external sources, we've identified that there's an attachment in this email that has a 75% score. And the individual looked at me with this beautiful smile and was like, look how cool this is. And I said to him, okay, cool, that's great. External sources. Which external sources? And what's the reference to you? Because if the source is a company on the other side of the planet in a different industry, what's the relevance to you? And here's the big question, and this, he was quite impressed by this. 75 what? Bananas? 75% what? What? Here's the interesting thing, right? So AI is, the certain AI approaches doesn't have that explainability. I'm going to touch on the user base as well, but let's say that same narrative, that same explanation of why email is bad were to go to a user. An end user, someone in the call center, finance, HR, doesn't matter, gets an explanation from AI saying this email is bad because of external sources. What are they going to do about that? How's that relate to me? I know this person, I'm expecting this email, I'm going to open it, and I'm going to be part of that 60% because I thought I trusted. So let's take a look at, well, why we as Darktrace think that the current one solutions are failing. We fundamentally, and this is a big point on the left-hand side, we think the approach needs a different perspective, right? Looking at yesterday's attack to protect me tomorrow with the hope it's okay tomorrow, it's not viable, right? Even with the scale of AI, I can say I can fill in millions and millions of emails into this global repository of what is good and what is bad, but bringing to the question of saying, well, company on the other side of the planet that has no relevance to me, how does that protect me? Because that isn't who I am. And coming back to remember that 135% increase, I as an attacker can go into ChatGPT and say, go and find me information around forget the gentleman's name, the CISO for University of Johannesburg, and then craft me a very special email around this particular individual. How is that reactive response for a company on the other side of the planet going to save that particular example? Another challenge is that a lot of organizations, a lot of solutions are still focused on just email. Microsoft Teams, Slack, SaaS, identity, all those kind of things are add-ons. They're saying, I'm going to protect the email and I'm going to slightly try and extend my knowledge and my leverage and my insights to a different platform. So what a lot of solutions, what a lot of people are doing is they still find themselves going from one UI to the next, from one platform to the next, right? Looking at some of the training and those concepts, right? Employees and analysts lack the context. Coming to that example, I love my example in this particular case. External sources from across the globe, 70 bananas. What does that mean? And looking at these traditional solutions, what is happening, and in this particular case, I asked this gentleman, I said to him, 75 what? What does this mean? And he said, well, what I'm just going to do, I'm going to go back into the UI, I'm going to look at a couple of headers, I'm going to compare this virus total. So without that explainability, what happens is that these AI solutions, they're not giving me an answer. They're not making my life easier. They're just pivoting me to something else, work somewhere else, right? Which leads into that 70% of failure. And I sort of alluded to it, black box AI solutions. It's wonderful saying, my solution receives 75 trillion emails a day, and it feeds into this global AI base. But how is that referenceable to me? How does that answer save you from that enhanced spear phishing attack that's generated using generative AI, right? I did already mention this particular scenario, but I would encourage everyone to think back to when they started their job, right? If you were to receive back then, on your first day, you receive your email, and it looks like it's coming from the CEO of the company, someone you aspire to be one day, and the language is your language, the link is your link, everything is yours, but you say, hey, listen, I want to ask this, and some solution said to you, the score is 5. What does it mean? It's got a 75 banana score. What does that mean? It's an external database. What does that mean? So here's the Darktrace, wrong button again. So here's the Darktrace approach, right? And it's part of, not just from an email perspective, it's part of our core DNA. We say, yes, let's use AI, but use it in a different approach. Use your network, your emails to understand you, and you, and you, and every one individual in this room. Because once we know what makes you unique and you're unique and your organization unique, we can then say, hey, listen, this very unique bespoke approach of an attack coming through, we cannot counter it because we understand you and you and you and each and every one of you, right? What we also say is leverage that understanding to truly understand behavior rather than user risk. I looked at some of the panels today. A lot of what seems to be a very in term is understanding user risk. And I'm not saying that's a bad approach, but how do you start doing that? You say, you know, this group has this risk profile, this person has access to this data, therefore that's the risk. Looking at a behavioral approach, you can say, well, this person normally accesses this and this and this, and that's okay. All of a sudden, it's the last day of the month, and they're downloading 400 files from OneDrive, and they're deleting 600 files from the file server. What's that about? That's a real example that I had with a customer about 4 years ago. We presented this finding to the customer, and we said to them, yeah, it's the file server, the person deleted 500 files, et cetera, et cetera. And the customer laughed, and he said, you know, that person just resigned the day after that particular situation, right? If a person wants to do harm, if a person wants to get in, they will. But understanding the behavior rather than just assigning a risk score, you can protect from an entire different perspective. Coming to that example that I mentioned, that 75 bananas. If I were to give you you on that first day when you start in your organization, you get that email from the CEO, it's got a red banner that says malicious. You click on the button and it says to you, well, you have received an email from this person before, and so has 15 other of your colleagues. But it's from a different server. It contains a link that you and no one else in your entire organization has ever seen. And analyzing the language of this email, it looks like this person is trying to coerce you into clicking a link, and it differs significantly from all the other emails that we've seen before. Because of this, we advise caution. Now, coming back to that 60%, the IBM factor of clicking on the link, I'm going to ask here, who's going to, with the explanation of external sources and 75 bananas, go, I want this email, and I'm going to click on the email, versus different server, different language, different tone, different intent, advising caution. Who's going to click on that link? You've got the context, right? And you can only get the context when you learn your behavior instead of looking at the entire organization. So this is the dark trace approach. Traditional email security solutions will say, I'm going to look at the attachment. I'm going to put it through a sandbox. I'm going to put it through a URL filter. I'm going to look at all these different things to try and secure the attacker. Is my time up? Oh, wow. Okay, cool. So thank you, guys. I hope you enjoyed my 75 banana joke. But yeah, please do come and visit us at our stand. At the end of the slide says booth 131. It's not 131. But our approach is vetted. Gartner put us as a visionary. Our customers agree that we provide the best experience and a legendary experience. Someone should have told me that button means that. But anyway, sorry, guys. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you.